The North African state of Libya is another world trouble spot of grave concern to the United States. Here, the formerly friendly monarchy was overthrown in 1969 by the Islamic fundamentalist leader and political anarchist Muammar Gaddafi. Under Gaddafi, Libya has become a haven for terrorist organizations from all over the world. The U.S. Sixth Fleet in the Mediterranean has been keeping close watch off the Libyan coastline for many years. There have been several clashes between Libyan and American aircraft, notably over the Gulf of Sidra in 1981, when aircraft from the USS Coral Sea splashed 2 Libyan fighters. The principal Libyan combat aircraft are the MiG-23 Flogger, MiG-25 Foxbat, and Su-22 Fitter, plus some French Mirage F-1s and 5s. Then in January 1986, Gaddafi drew a line of death across the Gulf of Sidra, openly challenging the United States to take action in support of international maritime law. From the end of January 1986, A-6 Intruders, A-7 Corsairs, F-14 Tomcats, and F-18 Hornets began flying almost constant combat air patrols from the carriers Coral Sea and Saratoga. The fighters carried a full load of Sparrow and Sidewinder air-to-air missiles at all times and carried out several interceptions of Libyan aircraft which ventured towards the carrier groups. In every case, during this phase of operations, though, the Libyans made no hostile moves and meekly allowed themselves to be turned back inland. In March, reinforced by the USS America battle group, U.S. ships crossed Gaddafi's line of death for the first time. The Libyans responded by sending out Nanuchka-class missile corvettes, one of which was sunk by a Harpoon missile launched from an A-6, and another damaged. In this slow-motion infrared sequence, a missile can be seen leaving the aircraft and hitting one of the Libyan vessels. Now, in response to a new wave of terrorist attacks in Europe, planning began for a major operation to teach the Libyan leader a lesson. On the 14th of April, President Reagan gave the okay for direct action against military barracks, airfields, and terrorist training camps at Tripoli and Benghazi. The U.S. Sixth Fleet would be reinforced by Air Force F-111 strike aircraft flying from bases in the United Kingdom. At RAF Lakenheath, 24 F-111Fs of the 48th Tactical Fighter Wing rolled out of their shelters and began to take off at 1800 hours. They were supported by 4 EF-111 Raven electronic countermeasures aircraft from the 42nd Electronic Combat Squadron at Upper Heyford. Because both France and Spain refused to allow the aircraft to overfly their airspace, the flight path had to be routed over the sea. Meanwhile, the carrier groups also maneuvered into position for their own attacks. The F-111s used in the strike were all armed with the PAVE-TAC weapon system. This is a streamlined pod which rotates out from the aircraft's belly when in use. It contains sophisticated terrain-following radar, as well as infrared and laser target designators which guide modern smart bombs accurately onto target. The bombs dropped on this mission were 2,000-pound Mark 84 Paveway laser-guided weapons and 500-pound Mark 82 Snake Eyes. In-flight refueling was accomplished in 4 stages on the outward journey and 2 on the return by KC-10 and KC-135 tankers from Fairford, Mildenhall, and NATO bases in Italy. Official Air Force targets in and around Tripoli were the Libyan Frogman HQ at Sidi Bilal, Gaddafi's command post headquarters in the Azizia barracks, and military transports at Tripoli Airport. The Navy was tasked with striking an alternative command post at the Jamahiria barracks in Benghazi and the air defense base at Benina. As the F-111s approached their targets, the paved tack pods were swung out in the terrain-following mode, and the laser designators switched on to warm up. These sample infrared line scan images show first the approach to the coast. Next is the low-level bombing run on the Azizia barracks. Gaddafi's circular white tent and even the tent poles are clearly visible. Members of his family were reportedly killed and wounded here. Finally, the F-111s approached Tripoli Military Airport. Here, 5 Ilyushin 76 transports on the ground are severely damaged by snake-eye retarded bombs. In the Libyan capital, the attack erupted. Libya possessed SA-3 and SA-5 surface-to-air missiles, and certainly fired many of her 23, 30, and 57mm anti-aircraft guns. Since the attack on Tripoli lasted only 11 minutes, and the defenses were not on alert, most of the fire loosed off by the defenders was certainly much too late, the gunners and rocket men actually firing wild. Despite the use of precision bombing methods, some weapons landed off target in a number of city areas. There were civilian casualties, perhaps as many as 300. Hospital wards began to fill up. The exasperated Libyan militias vented their anger. In the Tripoli suburb of Bin Ashur, close to the Libyan National Security Building, the French embassy was hit. The Swiss and Iranian embassies were also slightly damaged. It is probable the damage was also caused by Libyan SAMs, which had missed their targets, falling back to earth. For the attack on Benghazi, the Navy's carriers Coral Sea and America launched 24 A-6 intruders. 6 FA-18 Hornets were also dedicated to the attack. Main strike was provided by the intruders, mostly armed with 750-pound bombs. HARM anti-radiation missiles, which home on the radar emissions of enemy detection, and gun and missile guidance radars were also employed. And these certainly accounted for a complete missile battery south of Benghazi. The strike against Benina probably prevented the Libyans from scrambling their potent Mirage F-1 and MiG-25 Foxbat interceptors before the U.S. aircraft had departed Libyan airspace. In all, both raids actually lasted only 13 minutes. Shortly afterwards, one F-111 was reported downed, and a search and rescue mission was launched from the carriers. Unfortunately, the 2-man crew were lost. Major Fernando Ribas Dominici and Captain Paul Lawrence were subsequently awarded posthumous air medals. The remainder of the strike force returned safely to their bases. although one F-111 had to divert to Rota in Spain because of an overheating problem. The first F-111 touched down back at Lakenheath at 0630 hours the following morning. Mission accomplished. Later reconnaissance by high-flying SR-71 Blackbirds from Mildenhall confirmed the accuracy of the strike, performed at night after a grueling 6-hour flight. The next direct clash between America and Libya took place on the 4th of January 1989. Tension was high because of disclosures that Libya was building a chemical weapons plant at Rabta. 2 F-14 Tomcats had taken off from the USS John F. Kennedy on a routine patrol when, at 11:55 hours, an E-2C Hawkeye warned them that 2 Libyan MiG-23 floggers had just taken off. As the Libyans drew closer, the F-14 weapons officers locked on their missile guidance radars. The MiGs ignored this warning and continued to close in an attack mode. The leading Tomcat fired 2 Sparrow air-to-air missiles, which missed. The Libyans turned towards the wingman, who fired a Sparrow which hit one MiG, then followed through with a Sidewinder, which splashed the other.
Okay, he's got a missile off. Break it right. Good hit on one. Roger that. Good kill. I've got the other one. Select Fox 2. I got Fox 2. Shoot him. I haven't got a tone. Got the second one. I got the second one on the nose right now. Hey, I'm high cover on you. Get a Fox. Lock him up. Lock him up. Bam! Shoot him, Fox 2. I can't. I don't have a tone. So what? Good kill.
The 2 MiG pilots ejected safely, and the Tomcats turned back towards the carrier.
Okay, Meister, let's head north. Okay, port side, high, I'm coming down hard.
The U.S. Armed Forces had demonstrated once again that America will not give in to international terrorism.